new episode of Rassegna Caffè Live. Today, this episode will be in English because here's with me, there's Tara Casey Sharp. She's an engineer who's been working in the finance banking world. I hope I said it correctly. And we've known each other for quite some time because we used to be flatmates at the University of Warwick. That was such a nice time. Today, we're talking about something very useful, I think, because Tara came back from Canada where she's been an au pair for a year. So she'll talk to us about how to become an au pair, how to get a visa, all the things that people have to do in order to go abroad for a year. And she had such a good experience while she was there. She was able to explore Canada, to go on some trips, and at the same time she was working. So she'll tell us all that we need to know about that word, and I'll leave you to it, Tara. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for the introduction. So I don't really know where to start. That was a lot of ideas on where to go from. I guess like I can go from like visas and work my way from there because that's kind of the start of the process. So it depends obviously like when you're applying for a visa, it depends on where you want to go to because everywhere will have different processes. So I only really know the Canadian visa process, but obviously other countries will have different places, things in place. So there are companies that will help you do this. I did it all by myself because I refused to pay someone to do something that I know how to do. Like I can read and I whenever I was confused, I would Google something and then there was like you had to submit like pictures in a specific size format and stuff like that, and you just Google it and like find a website that would do that for me for free. So I was quite like lucky, especially because English is my first language. When I was applying, I could do my whole application myself and not have to pay, because some people pay thousands to do it themselves. So if you're able to do it yourself, it is very possible. It's a little bit more admin work, but I think it's worth it for the money you save. Because something to be aware of when you have like a visa to go abroad, you have to have money in your account just to go to the foreign country. So you pay for the visa and then you have to have, I think for Canada it was like £3,000 worth or $3,000 worth in your account. So you have to have this money sat in your account. So you don't want to be spending money because you need to have this to prove to them that you can live for a month or two by yourself. To be fair, they actually didn't check my bank account when I went, but these are like the rules. So just read up on all the rules. It's an expensive process. So before I went, I worked for a few months. So I graduated university and I worked a bit like on the side during university, and then I took a few months. I lived with my parents, very probably good for like if I had to pay for my own accommodation, I probably couldn't have afforded to do it. And then worked for a few months. Already had my visa when I was working. Actually, I applied for it whilst at university because it takes a few months to come through. And then I went. It was quite spontaneous actually when I went. So I found the family that I found on Au Pair World. And I actually went with the first family I talked to because I feel it feels like cheating on someone if you go behind their back and talk to someone else. So that's how I ended up moving to Vancouver, because it was one of the first families I talked to. They seemed quite nice. I video called them. The time difference was interesting.
Yeah,
You
I know
like
something
calling.
about time difference. Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah, you talk. I was calling them at like 2 in the morning because see, the first family I worked for, she had two kids, so it was a mum, and then she had two boys, and obviously I could only really catch them in that short window. I think it was just when they got home from school and just before the after school clubs happened. So I actually was up. You have to commit to being up at 2 in the morning once or twice to just have a quick video call to get to know people, because I don't want to go to a foreign country to live with people I've never talked to before. I know some of my friends, they called for like weekly for months as well. So it really depends on the person. But I called once or twice because it was fun and spontaneous.
Yeah, that's nice because I mean, you, as you said, it was all quite spontaneous. I knew that you were gonna do it while I just arrived in Scotland, so it was quite an adventure. And it was, I think, very good that you got to talk with the family more
Mm.
than once before you went there, because of course you were gonna live at their home for quite some time. So it's better always to know the people you're gonna live at, because you can always meet people that are not the best. I've heard some stories about a girl that had to change a family because this family was being quite abusive. So it's always better to get to try to get to know the people in advance.
Yeah, and obviously because when I was in Canada, I got to know a lot of other au pairs, so I've seen the range of ways that families can treat you, and like I know, like I myself had to I switched families after a few months of being with the first it was like actually a month after I've been with the first family,
It was
I
very,
switched
very
families.
soon.
But to be fair, I that was my own fault. Well, not my own fault, but like that was so I switched families because so the first family, to be fair, I don't know they necessarily needed a pair at that time. The dad was like partially funding me, and then I think he was a bit against it, and then the mum had jobs, cut back her hours, and it was I think it was like a week after New Year's Day, a week before my birthday, and the mum sent me a text saying they oh sorry, like they were away at the time, so I just looked after their dog, and I'd only been in Vancouver for a month, and the mum sent me a text saying, oh sorry, we're gonna have to like you're gonna have to move on to a different family, and it was a lot, because she said she couldn't afford to pay me because you obviously so that was a good thing about being an au pair in Canada. It's one country that you have to legally get the minimum wage, and then they can charge you. Check out the like obviously check out what's it, I can't remember the names of this. It's not states. I would check out basically the rules for the province you live in. But I think in BC it was like they can take out £375 from your wages for dollars for like food and living expenses. So like that was quite good. Like you
Yeah,
have to be paid.
how's that does that work? Like a person that's going to be an au pair, how much does do they can they expect to earn, and how does it work? Because I remember you telling me about the food, as you were saying now, like the food, the drinks. How does that work? Like if a person decide to leave to be an au pair, uh, how if a family tell them, okay, we're gonna pay you this, how much do you think it's not enough, you know?
So I can only tell you for in Canada, and specifically for BC because I know the laws there. So you had to get minimum wage, which was about $17 an hour. It might have changed since. And then they could charge you a set amount for your living expenses. Realistically, you do not need to buy food. You do not need to buy like like electricity, heating, accommodation. So all those sorts of things are covered. But you do need to get things like transport. Some families will cover that, but it really depends on the family. So both families I work for didn't cover that, but my friends' families, some of them covered ski passes, phone bills, transport around the city, unlimited. But it was really family to family. This is like have a discussion with the family before you move over. I think that's really important because if you get it set off from the start, it's a lot better. And also, if you know that the family doesn't meet your expectations, it's a lot easier to negotiate when you're not living there than when you're reliant on them.
That's a good
Um,
tip, actually. That's a very good tip. And as you were saying, you had to move and find a different family in a different city, while after the first month you were there, of course, you found new
mm,
connections, friends. So it was kind of hard for you, even if in the end it worked out very well. But how did you
yeah,
cope with that? Like, how long did it take for you to find a new family? And was it
so
easy or?
I don't think it's that hard. So once you've been an au pair once, I think it's actually really good because you've had the experience. And a lot of people come over, they don't necessarily when they don't have the visa yet that when they're looking for families. A lot of people haven't had experience looking after kids yet when they're looking for families. So if you've been an au pair, you've moved on, and not because of like you're not getting along with the family, you're moving on because of like something external. I think it's a really good situation to be in. I was quite in demand because of that. Um, I I actually I found a first family within like 3 days. Um, but I was a bit unsure because they lived somewhere. I wanted to stay near Vancouver because my friends were in Vancouver. I'd made amazing friends. It was only a month, but I'm still friends with them now. Um, so I call one of my friends like multiple times a week from there, so Vancouver. So we're still really close. But oh my gosh, you keep on going dark on my screen. But like I I wasn't too certain. I said that to them because they lived in a place that was like a bit more off the beaten track. So, and since I don't drive, it was a bit more like iffy. And also, they had twin girls. To be fair, they were adorable. They had two twin girls who just turned two, um,
Oh,
which was sweet. But they were like, I was like, this is quite a lot because I'd never looked after kids that young before. So I was like, okay,
two.
I took a bit of a step back, and then I think the day after I was like, hey, can I have 24 hours to consider it? They were like, hey, sorry, we found someone else who's more keen. Um, and then 2 days later, I found all these people on Facebook. So if you just search au pairs and then type in the city, normally there's an au pair group, there's families looking for au pairs, there are current au pairs who like you can maybe get in contact with, because there are lots of WhatsApp groups where people are looking for au pairs on there, so you can just reach out to those sorts of people. That's a great way to find families. And I think it was like 5 days honestly after I got a text, I talked to the family that I ended up living with. To be fair, they had one child. He's 16 months old. Absolutely love him so much. He, they had been talking to another person before me though, and I think they had a nursery place. So getting a nursery place in the city I moved to was impossible. So they were like, if you're going to come stay with us, we want to know within 12 hours. So I had to let them know by them. I talked to them in the evening and they said they wanted to know first thing in the morning the next day. And it was quite like, I think things can move quite quickly.
It was a lot to decide in 12 hours.
Yeah, but it was a good city. So it was, I mean, it was 5 hours by public transport from Vancouver, but it was just like two buses and a ferry ride. So ended up living in Victoria, which is just across the water from Vancouver. So I knew I could see my friends, which I did actually end up doing. I went over to Vancouver once or twice a month to go see them, which was quite nice. And it was another good city as well. Like really like a good size, still in the middle of nature. Like I'm not a big city girl, so I don't think I would have loved to live in like Toronto or something. Like it's too industrial for me.
And you're talking to us from London,
Yeah, I know.
which is ironic. But yeah, no, no, I get what you say. I saw the pictures you took in Canada and they looked amazing. I've never been there, but I really want to go.
It's honestly so stunning. So because I was like so lucky, I don't drive, but a lot of my friends drove. So often I go on a holiday once a month. It's an expensive like thing to do, but because when you're a parent, all your money can be spent on fun things. So I would like put aside a little bit, like, and be like, okay, we're gonna go. It will be mostly road trips. So I went to Tofino, which is this stunning like seaside town, which is I don't know, you go to you just go to places and they look like they were filtered. They look like they'd be in a movie, and it was just so amazing.
Is Hallmark movie, is that a Canadian thing or is that American?
I don't know. I think maybe it's both.
Oh, that's cool. I was thinking maybe you felt like you were in a Hallmark movie.
Honestly, it's very like it was so stunning. And to be fair, like one of the things I love about Canada is not just like the place, the people are so lovely. I miss my like I'd have at least one random daily chat with a stranger. Just walking down the street, they'd see you and they'd start chatting. And it was a bit weird at first because I'm not used to that from the UK. But like now I'm missing it.
Yeah, I tried many times because I grew up in Italy and I'm used to say hi to random people on the street. I tried to do it like a couple of times in the UK and I always got very weird looks by the people. So I got that I had to stop and I stopped.
They will think you're an absolute weirdo.
Which is
They'll probably go home
I
and
get
tell
why.
everyone.
I get why. It depends. It depends on how you grow up. I think Canadians, like Americans, are very used to being friendly and
Mm.
welcoming, and that's very nice. And so you would totally recommend to people to become an au pair if they think about it.
Yeah, just make sure that like don't I would say first of all, don't be scared to go younger than you're used to. I was so scared when I got like looked after like the younger kid that I ended up looking after for 6 months. But honestly, I cried when I left. And I think as long as you're open and honest with the family that like you haven't had too much experience, like they showed me how to like change a nappy, and they showed me like I'd never properly changed one before, and they were like they told me everything I needed to know. And then by the end of it, I was absolutely smashing it. I was like, okay, kids are easy.
Kids are so
Like
easy. Look at you.
I
That's
don't
so
know, it's just like it's just so sweet. I don't know, little kids are so adorable. Like don't be scared of them if you've not had experience with them.
That's very nice. And you made, as you said, long-term friends. You went to amazing places. You even went to Costa Rica, which is
Mm,
amazing. You created so many nice memories while you were there. And I think it was such a nice time you needed because once you go back, I mean, you're in London now, you're doing a big job at a big bank. So you're doing the, 9 to 5
proper
life right
corporate
now.
life.
Yeah, a corporate life, but that period of your life before was very much needed, and it's something you'll always remember.
Mm.
So that's something very nice you did. And thank you for sharing with us all your tips. Is there another thing you think about to tell the people that are listening to us, or you think you said everything?
I have no idea. I think there's a lot of things you can talk about on different subjects. So it's kind of, unless you give me an example, my brain's just going to go
Maybe
blank.
a flight, like, is there to Canada? I'm thinking from
Mm.
the UK, but UK, so Europe in general. Is there a company you would probably recommend because it's a cheap company with actually like good services to fly to Canada and come back?
So I think look at like I honestly just looked on Skyscanner to find what was cheapest. Something that so on the way back from Canada, because I knew I had 5 weeks, I knew I had a job guaranteed. I was like, okay, I can spend money. So I went actually back via Montreal and New York. And when I was looking at that, I actually just looked at I did a reverse search and I looked from England to America and found the cheapest locations to fly from. And it was either Washington, D.C. or New York. So it was like that. Those two I'd say are really cheap. And if you want a really cheap airline, I think it's Norwegian, ridiculously cheap flights. They run from New York. Um,
Or
other
Icelander,
than
maybe. Icelander?
yeah, but then you have to go via Iceland.
Ah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, I
But to be
remember.
fair, I think just look on Skyscanner and find one. Um, that's honestly what I did. Don't book it last minute like I did as well. I decided I was going to go 2 weeks before I went, and then I realized a lot of my friends didn't even know I was in Canada. So I called up I talked to one of my best friends, and she said, "Oh, I didn't know you were in Canada." So I had to put an Instagram post up to be like, "Oh, I love my new home," just to let everyone know that I've moved.
Yeah, yeah, and I remember that time. It was amazing though. Listen to all your adventures while being there. It was very entertaining. And again, thank you for sharing everything you told us. Whenever you want to be back and talk about your corporate life, you're welcome to, even if I don't think you want to talk about that, because of course there are privacy reasons and
Yeah, it's more just knowing what I can and can't say.
yeah, I know, I know. I
Like
don't
I
want to
don't
put you in
know.
trouble. Don't worry, we'll never put you in trouble. But you can actually come back sometime and we can do maybe an episode about being flatmates and what does it mean for you. I mean, you were starting university. Well, it was my first experience abroad ever, talking in another language for a few months. So we can talk about that next time and invited our other flatmate Trinity too. So do a little reunion. It should be
Yeah, that'd
fun.
be cute.
We can definitely do that. So thank you again, Tara, so much. And thank you to all the listeners of Rassegna Caffè Live, both on Spotify and YouTube. I'll see you soon with a new episode.